Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This video is going to be a wrap up of what I read in February and potentially a look at what I'm going to read in March. I don't know. I just learned the hard way that TBR lists don't always go the way you plan for them to go. So in February, I read 3 books, and if you've been here, you might remember me saying that in 2022 and 2023, I only read 5 books for like the entire year, like each year. So the fact that I've read 6 books within 2 months of the first 2 months of 2025 to me is a really big accomplishment. I'm very proud of myself. So I'm gonna do my best in talking about what these books were about, what I liked and didn't like about them. I will say though that I've watched a lot of booktube videos and I've seen people talk about books with great analysis, and I think that the more that I read, because I just don't really have a sense of what I like. Like, I was a big reader when I was younger, but in more recent years I think that I just haven't read as much as I've wanted to really have a good idea of what stories I specifically like. So there are some times where I really can't explain like why a story didn't stick with me, but I think as time goes on I'll get better in that regard. So anyway, this month, because it's February 28th, I read 3 books. The first book was Hood Wellness by Tamala J. Gordon. This was a book club read and I gave it 3 stars. The second book was on my Kindle, and it's Unlikely Story by Ali Rosen. I'll put it on the screen here. It comes out tomorrow, so I'll explain when we start talking about that book how I was able to download that before it even came out. And I gave that book 4.5 stars. And then the third book that I read and finished last night was The Secret Keeper of Main Street by Trisha R. Thomas. It's very fresh in my mind. I'm excited to talk about that one. So, Hood Wellness. Like I said, that was a book club book that I was not at all like excited to read. Number one, the ladies in book club, they started it before I did and they didn't seem to like it very much. And I had just read, I feel like I had a really good start to my reading this year, and I didn't want to read something that I wasn't gonna like. Also, Hood Wellness is nonfiction. I'm a fiction girl, and if I'm gonna read nonfiction, I would prefer to read like a memoir or an autobiography. But the funny thing is that Hood Wellness is like mini memoirs, like it's short stories from real people, so it actually wasn't painful for me to read. So the premise of the book is the author, Tamala J. Gordon, is trying to put forth a framework of self-care, of wellness, of healing for marginalized communities, mainly people who are marginalized at intersections. So say you're Black and a woman, or you're Black and queer and you're suffering like financially. She's trying to put forth a framework for wellness that isn't society's version of self-care. And by society's version, I mean like that the commodification of self-care, because not everybody has money to like go to Pilates or, you know, go to the spa or things like that. So she's trying to find a more communally based form of self-care for people that really need it and don't have other resources. But it's for everybody, really. And I like that. Like, I really enjoy that premise. I just prefer fiction. But anyway, I started reading it, and I think because the ladies in book club set the bar so low, I actually really liked it in the beginning. Because like I said, people wrote essays, and she, being the author slash editor, strung them together to create this book. And her own short stories are like spread throughout the book. And so, I'm not gonna lie, I like being, it's not that I like being in people's business, but I like, you know, reading about people's stories. So hearing about people's stories was very interesting to me, because it was all stories of like overcoming like really harsh circumstances, and it was inspiring. So I enjoyed that. Like I said, I enjoy reading about people's stories. And then that's just about it. Like, I gave it 3 stars because the author is a really good writer. Like, she's a really, really good writer. She's talented. I just felt like after getting past the first part of the book, the organization of it all just kind of confused me. It wasn't very clear that she was writing multiple short stories throughout the book, I thought that the one in the beginning was her only story. So I'm trying to figure out who the author, like what is this person talking about and why this story in here? Why is this story in here? But then I realized that she was doing that. It just threw me off. So the organization of it all kind of threw me off. I also felt like she parrots like a lot of ideas. I didn't feel like any new information was really introduced. Like this whole idea of the commodification of self-care and working against that has been talked about before. And she cites like a lot of research and a lot of like historical happenings without really going into what I feel is a critical analysis of it all. So it just kind of felt like I'm just reading about all these things that I've already heard about, and I didn't really enjoy that much. So after the first section, I kind of just got not bored, but I didn't feel like it was really offering too much. I still walked away with some good gems. And the ladies in book club, for their part, they felt like she was an opportunist, to not give away too much in case somebody wants to read it. She talks about her own story in the book, and she struggled financially, so she depended sometimes on like crowdsourcing like her funds or her money to get to where she needed to be, like basically for moving. Like she would use fundraising to move from like New York to Miami. And the ladies in book club, some of them were just like, I mean, if I'm going to give you my money to go somewhere, you need to be going to school, or you need to be like having a family member that you're trying to help or something. And I don't too much care about that. I'm not trying to like police like what she does. If people want to give her money for something like that, then great. Like, you know, what we do with our money is our own thing. So if she got money for that, more power to her. She was able to do what she needs to do to live her life. So to me, that didn't really matter. But what did matter to me is that there's a point in the book where she said that she only reads Black literature. And before anybody tries to come for me in the comments, I am a champion of Black literature. I make sure that I ingest a steady diet of like Black books. However, I think it's important to read other things too. So when she said that, she just kind of lost credibility to me, and the book just kind of, you know, it tanked a little bit. But I had to give her a 3 because I liked the premise of the book, and she is a good writer. I also wanted to share, if I have it in here, I also wanted to share one of my favorite quotes that she wrote. And it's about growth. Specifically in this chapter, she was talking about code switching and how people who have been in like these white centric environments, like Black people who have been in these white centric environments, trying to help them find ways to get back to their truer selves. And so for me, I was really thinking about it in terms of just, I'm 30 years old. I've just graduated for the last time from school. I have lived a lot of my life trying to please other people. And I'm not even talking about white people. I'm talking about like Black people, like people around me. And I'm trying to get to a place to where I know who I am. That sounds crazy to say, like, but I'm really confident. I know myself. I know what I like. I'm confident in all those things. And that process has been very scary for me because it's like things that I thought I liked, I don't really like that. And sometimes it's just it feels more safe to just go back to the way that I was before, doing the things that I was doing before, because that's what I know. But this quote that she wrote, and this is also why she got a 3, really like spoke to me. And it says, trust the process. There will be times when you want to return to the way you were. Maybe you'll miss your old friends or the habitual routine centered on being that other you. The closer you get to your organic self, the more you realize that you didn't like things you thought you had and enjoyed things that would have seemed foreign to the other you. You may find that the person you are, unshifted and organic, is too unfamiliar to your liking. Don't stop now, sis. There's a breakthrough that's bound to bloom from this breakdown. Unshifting is scary, and it's supposed to be. Most people live and die trying to fit in and blend. It's worth the moments of confusion and second guessing during this process. There's something at the end of unshifting that every Black woman deserves, her fullest self. And that was great. I love that. So there are things to be gotten from this book. I think a 3-star to me means that it was good. I wouldn't read it again. But it was good for what it was. So I would not say don't read this book. If you enjoy nonfiction, if you enjoy the premise of what I said, like if you are interested in that whole idea of like decommodifying self-care, then I suggest that you read this. Just because I interpreted it some type of way, I didn't feel like there was a critical analysis of things. You might get more from it. So I would recommend this. I support a Black sister. The second book I read was on my Kindle, and it was Unlikely Story by Ali Rosen. That book comes out tomorrow. I was able to read it beforehand though because of Amazon First Reads, which I've talked about like a number of times on this channel at this point. I'm not sponsored by them, but I might as well be. I love it. So I have a Kindle, and I never thought honestly that I would enjoy reading on a tablet. I've always been, or at least I thought I've always been like a traditional reading girl. And I still am. I prefer to have an actual book in my hands. But I found out that because I have Amazon Prime, I also have access to Amazon First Reads, which is basically books that are coming out, you get first dibs on them. So I think you have two. If you have Amazon Prime, you get I believe, two picks. And there's different genres of books. You just read the synopsis and you download it and it gets sent to your Kindle library and it's yours and it's for free. And you get to read it before everybody else does. And I think that there's a lot of positivity in that because there's still like there were reviews for Unlikely Story before I started reading the book, but I think it's really good to start reading something really just based off the fact that you're interested in the story and not any hype behind it. So if it hasn't come out yet, like how can you be like, you know, I want to read that because somebody else said something. So I don't know. It pleased me that I picked the book because I enjoyed Unlikely Story. I gave it 4.5 stars. It pleased me that I picked the book that I liked that I hadn't heard about anywhere else, just based off the synopsis on Amazon. So if you have Amazon Prime and you have a Kindle, please go and start using the First Reads program. Get your money's worth. So Unlikely Story, like I said, I gave it 4.5 stars, and it was about this therapist named Eleonora, or Nora for short, and she puts everybody first. So it is a love story. Basically, she's a therapist, but she also has a side gig where she's writing a column for a newspaper in London, an anonymous column, and she lives in New York, so it's kind of giving like Sex and the City vibes a little bit, but not really. And the editor of her paper in London, they've never seen each other, they've never talked on the phone, they always talk to each other in the margins of her paper. And so he'll edit her work, and at the end of it, he'll leave like her little notes about what she wrote about. And they've had this relationship for years. Like he's always saying something to her about what she's written. And they have these nice little conversations, and she looks forward to that. And it just so happens that now she's starting to feel something for this guy that she's never seen or met before. And she's a therapist, and she has her own therapist. So she goes to her own therapist to talk about her feelings about that. And the therapist is encouraging her to explore those feelings. And so at the same time that this love story is happening with this guy that she's never met in London, she has a client's ex-boyfriend move into her building, and that ex-boyfriend was kind of her client too, because that client of hers brought that guy in because the client wanted help breaking up with him. So the guy who's moving into the building hates like the protagonist in this story, the main character. So that's like a whole thing there. There's some friction there, but you can kind of see where it's going already. It's kind of like enemies to lovers. So she has this thing going on with this guy in London, and she also has a thing that's brewing at home. But in the midst of all of that, this very messy love story, there's a lot of life going on. So like, there's like aging parents and the relationships that we have with them. There's the relationships that we have with siblings who don't do anything, and like we're taking care of the aging parents. There's like a whole lot of love for introverts and like people who find value in having just one or two close friends. I love the intergenerational aspect of it because the protagonist lives in this building that has octogenarians in it, and she makes friends with them. And so just kind of reminding you that, you know, your friends can be of any age. You know, people older than you and younger than you might have like good insight to provide. I really love that community aspect of it, and the idea that like family and friends, they don't have to look a certain way. They can, it varies, and it makes things feel very like, it makes the possibilities feel endless, honestly, in that regard. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of the book. Like, even though the romance was this big thing, I loved the way the author talked about these like other real life happenings in the midst of that, because the love stories, they took forever. but I didn't feel that way because there was so much else going on. And if you are a person who you've been in therapy, I think that it gives some really good insight. Like the book reads like it's really trying to help you with your life. And I'm going to give you a quote from that one too that I really enjoyed at the end of this. But so if you're a person who's been in therapy, or you're not in therapy, but you could use like some gems to kind of help you out, this book is good for that. And yeah, I will say that I don't even know if I should have given it a 4.5. It was written very well. It flowed. The dialogue in the book was very believable. There were like little like nuances and conversations that I'm just like, this isn't just a book that was written by an author. This is a book that the author has kind of lived. Like she's been in these situations to understand like how this works. Like, you know, when you're talking to somebody and you're texting a person that you like, and you say something but you feel like you've been too forward, and you start trying to say more to kind of cover up what you just said, and like just little things like that. The way that she does them in the book is like, you know that she's been here before. It feels very authentic. And I think that's the mark of a really good story, is when you feel like the story could be real, or it kind of is real because you're identifying with it so much. So I enjoyed that, but it was something missing from it. I think it might have been the predictability. I don't know, but I just don't feel like the book is sticking with me. I re-looked over my notes about it before this video, and I remembered a bunch of stuff that I forgot, and I just read the book. So I don't know why it's not like sticking to my brain, but what I will say is when I read it, I really enjoyed it. And I want to share one of my favorite quotes from it with you now, just like I did with Hood Wellness. And so this is my reading journal. Maybe at some point in the year I'll do like a little flip through. But so my favorite quote, or one of my favorite quotes from Unlikely Story, says, "For most adults, when you don't talk about your feelings a lot, the vocabulary for it atrophies. When we're kids, we're taught to identify our emotions. We use color charts or affirmations to go from useless blobs to fully formed people. We learn how to say, I feel blank, when you blank, I want blank. We work on expressing ourselves without throwing tantrums. But then, as adults, we get better at camouflage. We learn how to redirect so we don't always have to feel so deeply. We comport ourselves so we can live in a world of adult feelings and expectations." And when I read that, I had to sit with it for a second, because that is so true. Like when I was in elementary school, I remember the counselor coming in and saying, like, teaching us about conflict resolution. And she would say to tell, you know, the person you have a conflict with, and we would have to role play this in class, like tell the person you have a conflict with, I feel like this, when you do this, I want this. And it's like, as an adult, I completely forgot about that until I read this book. Like, we learned these things when we were younger. We learned to like talk about our feelings when we were younger. And it's just like now it's a thing, and we're not doing that anymore. And I can fully attest to the fact that when you don't use your vocabulary to describe how you feel, you don't have the words for it anymore. Because when I was in therapy, my first go round a couple of years ago, the therapist used to start the session by asking me to like talk about my feelings and how I felt at that moment, identify where it was in my body and with the word. And I could never do it because I don't know how I was feeling. And that really made me think. And it's just like, we as adults have to work on sitting with ourselves and realizing, putting words to how we feel, you know, and identifying that. And also, like, when conflict with others, like honoring how we feel. If somebody did something and you have a problem with it, talk to them about it. For me and people like me, that might be something that's a little bit like daunting in some situations, but you have to do it because it's just so true. We had all the tools for this when we were younger, and it's like we got older and society, life happened, and it went away. So quotes like that are all throughout the book. So I think it is deserving of its 4.5 star. I couldn't give it a 5 because there's something missing, and I just don't know what that was. Another thing though that I liked is that at the end of the book there are recipes, because during the book, like throughout the book, the main character, she bakes a lot, and so she bakes and cooks, so the author includes some of those recipes at the end. And I love when people do stuff like that. Like, it just makes the book even bigger than what it already is, even more enjoyable. And so I really wish that I gave it a 4.5. So I enjoyed it, but I really wish that it was one of those reads that just, like, you know, I become obsessed with, because I think cooking the meals will make it even more of a thing for me. But I don't think that's going to happen. But I am going to try some of those things. And yeah, I fully suggest that if any of the things that I've said have stood out to you, that you read this book, though. It is good. I don't think that you'll be disappointed by it, honestly. I can't say that for sure, but you know, I liked it, so I want to say that you'll like it too. And then finally, the last book that I read as of last night was The Secret Keeper of Main Street. And this was not, if you saw my TBR video last month, I mean, the last book wasn't either, but this was not on my list. My boyfriend got this for me for Christmas, and he's just been like, not bothering me, but he's just like asking me so much, like when are you going to read the book that I got for you? And I was just like, I mean, eventually I'm going to get to it. But then I thought about it. I was like, you know, it's Black History Month. I read the synopsis, and it was a gift. And so I just decided to go ahead and read it. And I'm so happy I did, because this ended up being my favorite read of this month. And we got to get into it a little bit. First of all, I just think that it's so cute when somebody buys a book for you as a gift, because if they really love you, you can tell that they've taken the time to like pick out something that they think you would like. And that is exactly what happened here. I am a lover of historical fiction, and so he knows that, and he got me a book that is like historical. It's set in 1950s Oklahoma. I love reading about Black characters. I love a little bit of magical realism, and all of that is in this book. So basically, like I said, it's set in 1950s Oklahoma, a fictional town called Mendel. And this town has gotten like wealthy. The residents of this town are Black and white, but the white people have gotten wealthy off of oil. And I just also, sidebar, I just finished Landman on Amazon Prime or Paramount, one of the two. Great. So when I was reading about the oil in this book, I understood what was being talked about. But anyway, so yeah, the residents are like new money, and the Bailey Dowry, she's the main character. She's a dressmaker, and she has this gift of second sight. That's where the magical realism comes into the story. And she works at this dress shop, and a lot of brides come in there for dresses, and they specifically go to her because they know that she can touch them and like reveal who their true loves are, who they're supposed to be with. And so one girl, the way the book was advertised is that, so somebody named Elsa comes into this shop, and she gets like, she asks Bailey to touch her, and Bailey sees something that's really bad, and then somebody ends up dying. And so I don't know what I thought this book was going to be. I think I thought it was going to be like a whodunit, or like a, if you've read Where the Crawdads Sing, I think there was like a, I want to say that most of that book was a trial. I thought this book might have been like that, but it was not. And I'm okay with that. I'm really okay with that. I can't even really comprehensively tell you what it was about, because it was about so much, and it was only 298 pages. Like, there were lots of different storylines. There were different points of view. There was a lot going on with these characters who were all tied together in the most, like, not bizarre, but like wild ways. Bailey's story was like the most straightforward and like cute and innocent, and I loved it, but everybody else is just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And so there's no way that I can really give a synopsis for this, because the synopsis for the book itself doesn't really tell you what the book is about. But I will say that if you like multiple points of view, if you like historical fiction, magical realism, maybe you'll like the book. I was 70 pages into it before I realized that I was enjoying the story a lot. Like, at first I wasn't sure, because the author writes, she has an interesting writing style. And maybe she's, like I said, I haven't read enough in recent years to really pinpoint like the different writing styles between authors and like what I really, really like and dislike. But she would say something and it would make you think, like, does that mean what I think it means? Like, oh, she rubbed her stomach. I'm like, is she pregnant? And then like a paragraph or a page or a chapter later, you realize that, oh, she is pregnant. Like, there is no, like, the audience is in the dark about what's going on in this book. And I think that kind of threw me off, because in other books that I've read, it's kind of like, you know, things maybe before the characters. I don't know. I feel like in other books I've read, it hasn't really been like that. There's something about how it was written that just kind of threw me, or I didn't feel like what was being said was really sticking until I was about 70 pages into the book. And then I really started to be like, okay. And I think that was because drama. There's so much drama in this book. It's unbelievable. It got to a point to where I was just like, I had no idea what score I was going to give it, because it's just like, how can one town, one group of people experience all this stuff? This is a lot. I was just like, it started to get to a point where it felt bizarre. And then for the book to be 298 pages with all these different storylines, with all of this bizarre, wild drama going on, I was like, how is she going to wrap this up in a way that like feels satisfying to me? But then she did it. She did it. And so I was just like, I got to give it a 4-star. I give it a 4-star because the synopsis is not what the book was really about. And because it took me 70 pages before I felt like things were starting to stick to me. And yeah, but it's a 4-star because it's a really solid read. And it was my favorite read of the month. And I'm starting to wonder, I don't know, I just feel like I couldn't in good conscience give it a 5. But I really enjoyed it. And I think one of my favorite things about the book was Bailey, because she reminds me of myself. She's so, she's looked at as innocent. She's introverted, quiet, to herself, does what she's supposed to do. And she has her own little love story in here. And it's like insta-lovey. And I realized that I love insta-love when it is done right, whatever that means. I don't know, but I love that for her, and it was just so cute and meaningful. And so I'm going to go ahead and read the quote from that one too, from this book that was one of my favorites. So the guy that Bailey, main character, starts to date in this book, she meets him earlier and he has no idea who she is. It's like, I've never seen you in this town before, I've never heard of you, like, who are you? And so later on in the book, at the end, she finds out that he did know who she was, and this is what it said. She says, "Why didn't you say anything? You acted like you never met me before," she asked. And he said, "Because I hadn't met you before. You can't believe everything you hear. People say a lot of things, don't mean any of it's true." And that, like, I felt that. And it really reminded me of Ali Rosen's book, where she was talking about how people have so many layers and we see so many different sides of people. And it's really imperative to remember that the person that you meet, that they have a lot more to them than what meets the eye, or like what's probably been said about them to you. And so that was just a very simple, dang, I need to adjust this. That was a very like simple quote, but it was profound to me because it's something that I've been thinking about a lot in recent like times, and in recent months, like, you know, just the importance of forming your own opinion about things. Yeah, it was a great book. It was a great book. I don't know how to market it. I don't. But if you enjoy historical fiction, if you like mess, trigger warnings, there are some, like, there's sexual assault in the book. Of course, racism, because given the time period and the area that it's set in. So keep that in mind. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. Every single storyline to me was wrapped up in a way that made me feel like, all right, I can do this. So, yeah. That was my read. Those are my reads for February. And so for March, I'm actually very hesitant to share what I'm planning on reading for March, because there were several books that I had on my TBR list for this month that I did not read, mainly because I didn't feel like it. I guess I am a mood reader. But I can say that one book that I will be reading for sure in March is Grown Women by Sarai Johnson. I believe that this just won an award. This is another book club book of mine, and I'm excited about it. I read the cover, or I read the fold on the inside, and it's about, from what I gather, it's about intergenerational relationships between mothers and daughters. And so, and not just different mothers and daughters, but like this one line. So a mother who has a daughter, and then that daughter has a daughter, like these 3 generations. And so it sounds wonderful. and I believe that I'm gonna like it, especially given all the awards that it's just won. However, my book club is known to me for picking books that are like heavy, and I don't know, I feel like I've been reading heavy books the entire year. Like, not heavy per se, like they have heavy topics, like very grown, very adulty, like all the woes and things that we deal with as late 20, 30 plus people. And you know, I'm kind of tired of it. I want to be a kid again in some ways, and I actually just journaled about this recently. But I'm thinking that I might, before I start Grown Woman, I might try to do like this little palette cleanse type thing and read A Girl, a Raccoon, and the Midnight Moon. If you've seen my book outlet warehouse shopping blog / haul, I mentioned this book in there, and it's middle grade. I'm quite sure it's an easy read, and while it might not be like the most profound book in the world, it does have a great review from the author of Ella Enchanted, and she says that she says the book is bursting with charm, lovable characters, and excitement that builds and builds until I almost exploded. So I was just like, you know, I want to read something that makes me feel good, something that brings me back to like a childlike place. I've been reading a lot of very adulty stuff lately, and while they've been good, adulthood is heavy, and so I just want something that's a little bit more light. So this might be my next read. What it's about, I think it's like a little cute little mystery. This little girl, she loves to read. Her mom works in the library in New York, and she spends all her time in the library. And apparently somebody steals the head of a statue, and like they have to close the library down, and she's like devastated because she loves being there, so she's trying to figure out what's going on. I think there's a talking raccoon, and yeah, it sounds cute, and it had such a great review, and it's middle grade, it's like I said, I just need something light, and so that I'm thinking that will be the very next book that I read before I start Grown Women. And then also, eventually I'm going to read this, hopefully this month, but it's called The Lonely Hearts Cinema Club, and from what I remember about this, from what I read about this book, it's basically about these college students who they have to share space with senior citizens. So that, I don't know, something happens to their dorm, and they have to live with senior citizens in their living quarters. And so it's supposed to be a feel-good book, and it literally says growing up isn't easy no matter what age you are. And so I'm really drawn to the intergenerational aspect of that. I don't know why, but lately I have a heart for like senior citizens. I think that society tries to throw them to the wayside. When I see them, I just want to give them hugs. And you know, we're all aging. We're all going to be there, God willing, blessedly, one day. And so I don't know, I just want to read. I was drawn to that book, and I thought that it might make me sad given it's talking about, you know, older people, but it says it's a feel-good book, so I think that's going to be another one. I'll probably bracket Grown Women with those two books. So, and also tomorrow's March 1st, so I gotta check my Amazon first reads and see what's on there. I don't know if I'm going to do that this month, but I'm definitely going to go on there and download my book. But can you believe this is my third time filming this video? Like, I'm really dedicated, y'all. I'm dedicated to this channel. So please like and subscribe, please, because I'm trying real hard. I'm trying very hard. But if you enjoyed this video, like I said, please like and subscribe and comment. Let me know what you're going to be reading in the month of March and what you read for February. And stay tuned, because I'm going to be posting every week. Bye, y'all.